Hi, I'm Terry White for Havel Scissors. I've been working on a project using the tiniest bits of scraps, paper, and ribbons, and fabrics, and I'm going to show it to you today. I call this Scrappy Spiderweb. I started with an old-fashioned pattern called Spiderweb, which was used during the Depression era to use up tiny scraps of fabrics. Now these are 3-inch blocks, so the scraps I'm using here are much tinier. And this is a cut and paste project in a flea market frame. The pattern I wanted, I found in this book, The Collector's Dictionary of Quilt Names and Patterns by Von Ken, and it was first published in 1980. This is one of many versions of the Spiderweb, and the one thing I like about this dictionary is that she also shows you the places where these patterns first appeared, and then these are all hand-drawn. Remember, this is from the 1980s, and not everybody had a computer back then. I've decided to use a 3-inch block. So first I drew the little block out and then I drafted it on graph paper so I have a 3-inch block. And so now I cut some purple fabric pieces in 3-inch squares, used my rotary cutter, and also a piece of paper. Now this is copy paper, copy weight paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the piece of purple fabric onto the paper, and that's going to give me some stabilization. And I'm going to do this twice. Now, the full instructions and pattern for this project are on havelsewing.com website. Now these are the kind of scraps I'm going to use. This is wrapping paper, and here are fabric scraps. Here are magazine rips. Okay, and these had some really great colors and textures in it. Here is some interesting little papers, and I use travel brochures because a lot of times they have just brilliant colors and designs in them. Here's another piece from a magazine rips. I use things like packaging. In fact, I even, in the one project I'm using, Havel's packaging, playing cards, glued up sequiny stuff. And I'm pulling all of this stuff here, packaging. And then, this is really fun, things like stickers. You see I'm using, this is kids stickers. Okay, so some of these designs even look like quilt patterns to me. And there's little words too, and these things will all be cut up. So all I'm looking for is color and texture. Okay, so what I want you to see here is I'm making my blue scrap sheet. And I'm starting with, well, blue and green. So what I'm starting with are big pieces. So here we've got magazine rip, tissue paper. This is some packaging, tissue paper overlaid, and some fabric. And so what you see here is I started with big pieces like this, and then I started cutting out smaller things and building up. Now the thing is, we're going to be cutting really small pieces out of this. And so the more little things you have on here, the more complex it will look, and it will be good. Now, and I start with the bigger pieces, and then I can put little complicated things on. For instance, this is waste from these stickers. And this waist itself has real interesting cutout and texture in it. And so something like this I'm going to just glue right on top up here. Here's part of that magazine rip. And this I'm going to want to cut into little pieces, because as much as I can cause more complication, more lines of different colors and textures, the more interesting my block's going to be. Now, I've got mostly blue and green here, but you can see there's a little bit of red in this flower, little orange flower. Having a little bit of different colors mixed in add real interest. I'm not going to put a big red thing in the middle, anything like that, but the different things that I put on are going to add interest. Now, these stickers are just really fun, and you can add glue anything onto here, because I've just used regular school glue for this. Pieces of ribbon, pieces of anything. Okay, here I've got some waste from these circle stickers. Not using the circle stickers, but using the waste around it. It adds shiny, and it adds a little bit of overlay design. You see that? Okay. Then I can go in also, and I can color. If I've got areas that, I am going to glue that on. If I've got areas that I think are a little too plain, I can just use a crayon and do some interesting, just shapes, marks, little circles if I want, little circles. You can overlay, you can paint on this, you can overlay more tissue paper on it. Look, I can even color in there if I want to with a marker. That adds funny to it. Okay? Just make it as complicated as possible. So I've got markers, crayons, color pencils. This looks a little boring, but it really wouldn't be, you would believe how interesting this stuff adds. My blue scrap sheet here starts with cardstock, and this is sort of like a cardboard. You could use cereal boxes. It's the same sort of weight. And so what I did was, see, I've cut this out. What I did was glue my design onto the back of the cardstock, and I cut it out. And so I have my whole little quilt block here. Now what I'm using to cut are these Teflon Scissors by Havells. They can cut through all of that gluey mess, adhesive things, stuff like duct tape, painted surfaces, all kinds of mess. And because they're Teflon, they resist all of that. These are also serrated blade, which is really nice. Plus, I like the bigness of it, the sturdiness, bigness of the scissor, because I've got to cut through now all of these layers, okay? And these scissors, I just want to tell you, they come in another size. They come in this small size. Aren't they cute? But you don't want to use your fabric scissors doing this kind of a thing. And if you're ever going to just buy paper scissors, good scissors, these are amazing. The Havells Teflon Scissors. So here is my scrap on this side and my design on this side. Okay, so I'm going to keep my little design right here. It is my guide. And what I'm going to do is look at this, and all of the red pieces, you see all the dark pieces here, I'm going to make a mark on here. So each place where there's a red on here, corresponding spot here, I'm going to put an X. Okay? And I have to really be careful when I'm doing this. I have to focus to be sure that everything that's red and nothing that isn't red gets an X on it. I think I did that right. Okay, now here are my two pieces of purple fabric that are backed with a piece of paper. Now it's important that you don't put cardboard on the back of this. This needs to say kind of flexible, because this is so unflexible. These are so sturdy that if you tried to glue these onto something that was sturdy, you'd have a lot of curling going on, and this is just easy. So now what I'm going to do is cut according to this design, and all the pieces that have an X on them will go on this block, and all the pieces that don't have an X on them will go on the other block. So this is going to produce two blocks, reverse of each other. Okay, so I have cut out all the little pieces, and then you can see that I'm fiddling with them on the purple fabric. Strong contrast here really helps, but the purple fabric is also a hand dye, so it has some texture going too. So that's how I get the big contrast, was the blue and green. You know, it's color contrast, but also the purple is really dark. So that's something to consider when you're working on something like this. It is good to have, I think, but do whatever you want, to have a strong contrast. So now you can see, the cool thing is you really don't know what you're going to get when you're making that scrap paper, that blue and green scrap paper first. This is really fun because here's that little yellow sticker that I put in there, and that waste. Here's that waste from the blue stickers, and it's just really fun when you can see here that because of all the little things, lots and lots and lots of little things overlapping, that I've got some really neat designs, plus there's a buildup of texture, so you get this three-dimensional look. Now my background is the same kind of a technique as the blue sheet. Here I've got the orange and yellow scrap sheet, and there's pieces of fabric. You can even see right here, this is a cutout from a magazine, and these are pillows on a couch. And then this is some sort of window treatment. And I've got the wrapping paper and some odds and ends of fabric. Some here, this one was cut with the serrated rotary cutter blade. And so this is my background. Now I like to use flea market frames, and so actually the design is going to be, for me, the design is going to be determined by the size of frame that I've got. And here I am trying to, okay, I haven't even glued these down yet, but it's going to be really fun. So on this one I've decided that because of the size of the frame, that my layout is going to be like this, like that, and maybe I'll even take my original design and just glue it right in there. At this point you can glue all kinds of little things to add more interest in what you might think of as lattice strips. I want to talk about a detail of my finished project. This is the one I showed you at the beginning. This is a flea market frame that I found, and it's got these really interesting, cute little details, very cheap. But I wanted to show you some of the other additions onto this. After I placed my quilt squares, then I added a few additions to the back. It was before I glued them down, and I was playing with the design. Here's a fish that came from some travel brochure. I added these little corner squares. Here's a little piece of tissue paper that has a design on it for embroidery, and so I wanted to show you a little bit closer. In this case I didn't put enough little things, and so what I have here is an overlay of some painted fusible web that was overlaid onto some painted fabrics and some prints, and so you can get a really nice natural look by overlaying things like this. And then here's a piece from overlaying lots of little pieces, so you can see there's a real difference here. I hope you've enjoyed this project. This is Terry White for Havel Scissors.